Now we want to understand what's a bond and how is it different from a stock. A bond is simply an IOU. Let's go back to our example of Sarah and John to see how this works. Okay, Sarah, she wants to start her lemonade stand, but she thinks that it's going to do really well, and she doesn't necessarily want to surrender ownership of her company to her friend John. She wants to retain 100% of the ownership so that she can receive the profits from the company later on down the road without having to split it. However, she still doesn't have enough resources to start the company on her own. So she comes up with an idea and she pulls aside her friend John and she says, John, I want to start a lemonade stand, but I don't have the money to purchase my lemonade cart. Can you help me out? And he says, yeah, I'd be willing to loan you some money, but how do I know that you're going to pay me back? And Sarah says, tell you what, we'll write up a contract. You'll loan me the money I need. And in return, I'll give you a note saying that I'll pay you back at a future date. So let's see how this works. Sarah gives John an IOU, and John gives Sarah the money that she needs to go purchase her lemonade cart. So now Sarah is the sole owner of the company. However, John still has an interest in the company. He wants it to do well because he expects that Sarah is going to pay him back at some later date. In this example, this would be considered a bond. Sarah is issuing the bond, and John is the recipient of the bond. So he is the bond holder. Something important to note here. Now, John, he's not necessarily just going to loan Sarah $100 for free and say, pay me back in a year, right? Because he probably has use for that money as well. Instead, what he'll do is he'll say, Sarah, I'm going to loan you $100, and I don't expect you to pay me back right away, but I do expect you to pay me some interest. And Sarah says, that sounds great. I'll pay you 5% interest until the time 1 year from now that I pay you back the full $100. So John loans out $100, and in return, he actually receives $105 back, right? Because he receives his initial investment of $100 back, and then he also receives an interest payment of 5% from his friend Sarah. Let's look at a couple definitions related to bonds to help you better understand this. So the first one here is going to be the face value of a bond. And this is simply the amount of money that the bond issuer promises to pay when the bond reaches maturity. So in our example, Sarah was the one that issued the bond to her friend John, and John lent her $100. So when she issued the bond, she promised that she would eventually pay him $100 back. That would be the face value of their bond. The next one is the coupon. The coupon refers to the interest payment on the bond. In this example, Sarah promised John that she would pay him 5% interest. So the $5 payment of interest to John would be considered the coupon. The last one here is the term of the bond, so the length of time before the bond reaches maturity. And by maturity, I just mean the date when Sarah has to pay the full amount back to John. In our example, the term of the bond was for 1 year. Now that we better understand how stocks and bonds work, let's talk about where we can purchase them in real life.